Welcome to today's webinar on managing your business during coronavirus, covering reporting, regulations, and tax. I'm Andy Harrison, and I'm from the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. Before we start, a couple of housekeeping points. There are controls at the bottom of your screen to pause the session and for adjusting video quality and sound. You can ask questions during this webinar by selecting the Q&A symbol on the right-hand side of your screen, typing your question in the Compose box, and then selecting Send. A recording of the webinar and links to useful information will be circulated to all participants later today. Next slide, please. The government is supporting businesses and their employees with a package of measures during this period of unprecedented disruption. The Coronavirus Business Support Hub brings together all government guidance on running your business during coronavirus. To visit the hub, search Business Support on gov.uk. You can use the Business Support Finder tool on gov.uk to see what support is available for you and your business. Answer 9 simple questions to receive a list of the support your business may be entitled to. As well as introducing new support packages, the government is introducing temporary changes to allow businesses under particular pressure from the impacts of coronavirus the flexibility to better manage their businesses. A range of business rules have been temporarily relaxed to make it easier for businesses to continue working. For more information, search rules that have been relaxed to help businesses during the coronavirus pandemic on gov.uk. Next slide, please. Today's webinar will help set out some of the ways that rules have been temporarily relaxed or revised to support businesses during this time of disruption. I'm delighted to be joined by a number of colleagues from across government to tell you more about changes to right-to-work checks, filing reports and accounts, and paying taxes. Before we address these areas in detail, I wanted to provide a short overview of some of the wider rule relaxations available to support business as part of the government's coronavirus economic response package. As I go through these announcements will appear in the webinar chat box that will contain links to the relevant government web pages. So if you open the chat box, you'll see these announcements. If you're an employer, a change to regulations will allow up to 4 weeks of unused leave to be carried into the next 2 leave years, easing the requirements on business to ensure that workers take the statutory amount of annual leave in any 1 year. The changes will ensure all employers affected by coronavirus have the flexibility to allow workers to carry over leave at a time when granting annual leave could leave them short-staffed. The government has also taken the decision to suspend enforcement of the gender pay gap deadlines for this reporting year 2019-2020. The decision means there will be no expectation on employers to report their data. The implementation of reforms to off-payroll working rules have also been delayed for 12 months. The reforms will now come in on the 6th of April 2021. To enable vital services to continue and frontline workers to get to work, all cars, vans and motorcycles which usually require an MOT test will be granted a 6-month exemption from needing a test from the 30th of March 2020. The Department for Transport has also put in place temporary changes in professional driver qualification requirements and driver's hours rules. Sector-specific changes have also been introduced. For example, planning rules have been relaxed so pubs and restaurants can operate as hot food takeaways. A temporary change to the rules around the destruction of spoiled beer, cider, wine or made wine have also been announced. New temporary measures will safeguard the UK High Street against aggressive debt recovery actions during the coronavirus pandemic. Statutory demands and winding up petitions issued to commercial tenants will be temporarily voided, and changes will be made to the use of commercial rent arrears recovery. And a revaluation of business rates will no longer take place in 2021 to help reduce uncertainty for firms affected by the impacts of coronavirus. The government is extending deadlines to some consultations and calls for evidence to give all stakeholders more time to submit their views and allow them to fully engage with consultations and the policy-making process in relation to various support measures. Visit the Business Support Hub on gov.uk for more information on managing your business during coronavirus, including advice for specific sectors. And to get the latest updates directly to your inbox, you can subscribe to the Coronavirus Business and Employers Bulletin.
I'm Julie Little, and I'm joined by my colleague Andrew Pinnell. We're from the policy team in Companies House, and we deal with accounts and reporting there. I just want to give you a bit of background first. So just to say that there are 4.3 million companies registered with Companies House, and all limited companies and limited liability partnerships must submit accounts and a confirmation statement every year. Any company or limited liability partnership which has a legal obligation to file will accrue an automatic penalty for late filing. And Companies House has powers to strike off a company or an LLP from the register if it fails to file these documents. So we understand that at the moment this is a difficult and challenging time for businesses across the UK, and we therefore put some additional support in place to help businesses meet their legal responsibilities and also to try and keep our register as up to date as possible. So during the pandemic, we will continue to contact customers to remind them of their responsibilities, and also we'll encourage companies to file their statutory documents as soon as they're able to do so. I'm going to discuss some of the measures that we put in place today, and details of all the measures that I discuss are available at our website, which is www.gov.uk/Companies House. Next slide, please. Oops, sorry. Sorry. Right, so just going to discuss extensions we put in place to our filing deadlines for accounts. So the Companies Act has provisions to allow extensions to filing deadlines. In the current circumstances, we've broadened these. So from the 25th of March, those that are applying for an extension to their filing deadline and cite COVID-19 as the reason will automatically and immediately be granted a 3-month extension for filing their accounts. These requests, however, need to be made before the filing deadline has passed. That's really important. There are some exceptions to this. So if you've already been granted an extension, or if you've applied to shorten your accounting reference period already, you may not be eligible. Further information about these exceptions are available on our website. If you think that applying for an extension to your filing deadline would be helpful for you, you can make an application through our fast-tracked online system. This takes about 15 minutes to complete, and this online form is available on our website. We don't accept emails, so you must fill in the online form. And again, as I said before, we're encouraging companies to file their statutory documents to us as soon as they're able to and use our online services where possible. Next slide, please. So in most cases, we think that requesting an extension to the filing deadline will be sufficient to give you additional time to file your accounts. However, in some circumstances, companies may think that there's still a need to extend their accounting reference period. They can do this by contacting Companies House and giving notice to change their accounting reference date. Now, this is normally only allowed once every 5 years, and we would normally only allow companies are normally only eligible for second extension in very certain circumstances. If you think this is something that would help your company in the current circumstances, you can make an application. It has to be made in writing to this email address, which is inquiries@companieshouse.gov.uk. Next slide, please. So, late filing penalties. When accounts are filed outside of the statutory filing period, which is 9 months for a private limited company and 6 months for a public limited company. But remember, you can ask for an extension to that at the moment, and that'll give you an extra 3 months. A civil financial penalty is automatically incurred. These are at various levels, depending on the size of the company and any previous late filings that may have occurred. Now, the registrar has the discretion not to collect a penalty in exceptional circumstances, and companies that are issued with a late filing penalty due to COVID-19 will have their appeals treated sympathetically. Next slide. So, strike-off action. So from the 16th of April 2020, Companies House will temporarily pause the strike-off process to prevent companies from being dissolved during the COVID-19 pandemic. We're hoping that this will give businesses affected by COVID-19 the time they need to update their records and help them avoid being struck off the register. Just remember that strike-off action applies to both failure to file financial records and a confirmation statement. So we're keeping that policy under review, and we will amend it as necessary in light of the progress of the COVID-19 outbreak. Thank you for listening. That is the end of my presentation, and I will now hand back to Andy.
Yeah, so I'm Andrew from the accounts policy team at Companies House. I've been keeping an eye on the live feed here with some of the questions I've come through. So some very good questions here, so I'm just going to try and attempt to answer a couple of them for you now. So one of the questions we've got, if I can't file accounts because of COVID, will I still get a fine? We're encouraging all companies, as Julie mentioned earlier, to apply for an extension to your deadline if you can't file on time, and anybody who quotes COVID-19 will get an automatic 3-month extension. Appreciate for some companies, you may have already missed the deadline, or the deadline might have expired before these easements came in back on the 2nd of April. So in those cases, unfortunately, the company will still receive an automatic late filing penalty. However, we do have discretion not to collect those penalties, and we are treating all appeals based upon COVID very sympathetically. So although a penalty will be issued, you are well within your right to appeal against it. Another question we've got here. My company has to file its statutory accounts by the 31st of October for the year end in January 20. Is this deadline going to be moved? Answer to that is only if you want it to. At the moment, it will stay the same, but if you do think that you will struggle to meet that 31st of October deadline, if you just go to our online portal on the link that Julie mentioned on the previous slide, and we will be able to, should be able to grant you an extra 3 months to file to bring it up to the end of January if you do think you will miss that deadline. Okay, another question I've got here. How can I send accounts to Companies House? I would normally send by post. Can I send via email? We did look into allowing the filing of all documents via email, but we did run into a few problems, mostly around technical limitations such as like mailbox size limits and the format, in addition to some authentication issues. So they can't be filed via email. Our Cardiff office is still open to receive post 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And 98% of accounts types can be filed electronically either through our website or via software. But if you are one of those 2% who aren't able to use our online filing method for accounts, they will still have to be sent in via post. Another question I've got here. When I applied for an extension on filing my account, but I didn't hear back yet, what should I do? So if you applied via the online portal, the decision is normally done automatically. So it takes about 10 to 15 minutes to fill in, and you get the results straight away. So if you didn't receive the result back, just pop onto our website and look up your company on there. The deadlines are updated in real time. So if the request was granted, you'll be able to see what the deadline is. Obviously, if it is 12 months from the year end, that'll let you know automatically that the extension has been granted. Not every company is eligible. Things like if you already had an extension or if you've altered your year end, you might not be eligible to receive the 3-month extension, but either way we should let you know whether it has been refused or not. So I think the best thing to do for this particular case, if you were to contact us either by telephone, email or via social media with the company details, we can chase up and find out what the result of that extension application was. Okay, a couple more here. Next question, we missed the application deadline for the 3-month extension by a few hours, and we're advised that the civil penalty will be issued. Yeah, unfortunately, as I briefly mentioned earlier, when the companies have got 9 months to file, as soon as midnight expires on that last day of the 9-month period, unfortunately our power to grant an extension on behalf of the Secretary of State does go away. So if you have missed the deadline, unfortunately you won't be able to grant an extension anymore. But as Julie mentioned, we have paused all kind of strike-off action, and we won't be taking any criminal prosecution action against the company. And although you will receive a late filing penalty, again, you're well within your rights to appeal against that penalty, and we are treating them all quite sympathetically. I just have one more question about the voluntary dissolution. So as Julie said, we've paused the strike-off action at the moment. Does this also apply to voluntary applications? The short answer to that is yes. If you voluntarily want to strike off, we'll still publish a notice in the Gazette as usual, and normally wait 2 months then for any objections before striking the company off. So in the interest to protect all kinds of creditors or any interested parties who may not be in work and be able to check up on companies, we have decided that it will apply to the voluntary applications as well, purely just to so protect any creditors or interested parties who may not want the company to be struck off just yet. So I think that's the majority of the questions answered there from Companies House. So any more, please get them through to us. We can answer them when we can.